Hey everyone! Tonight we start with Rain on Pavement, the kind that makes old neighborhoods shimmer like broken glass. You might not survive this one, because it isn't about revenge with fire. It's about revenge through silence, through strength, through the quiet rise of a woman everyone thought was done. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And if you're listening right now, drop your location and local time in the comments below. I love seeing where these stories find you, from small-town kitchens to city balconies. We're all part of this quiet midnight conversation. Now, turn off the lights, maybe let a fan run for some gentle white noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. When my son, Devin, decided to move into his mother-in-law's mansion, he didn't just pack his suitcases, he packed away my heart, too. His wife. Candace, though she preferred Candy, a nickname as sticky as her attitude, smiled wide that morning, certain her life of silk sheets and champagne had finally begun. They loaded their things into a sleek black car sent by Vivian Sterling, Candace's mother, a woman who wore wealth-like armor and looked down on people like me as if we were smudges on her designer shoes. Candace stood on my front porch, rain threatening to fall. Her hair perfect as glass, her eyes sharp as knives, wrought in that dusty old house. "You washed-up old-timer," she shouted, loud enough for the whole block to hear. The words hit me harder than any slap could. Neighbors came out, Mrs. Jenkins from next door, Mr. Powell from across the street, their faces caught between shock and sympathy. Devin didn't defend me. He didn't even flinch. He just shut the trunk, climbed into the car, and drove off without a glance back. The sound of that engine fading down the street was the sound of motherhood cracking. Inside the house, the silence was unbearable. You'd think silence would comfort you after years of noise dishes clattering, footsteps, arguments, laughter, but it doesn't. Silence is a mirror. It forces you to see what's left of you after everyone's gone. For days, I wandered from room to room like a ghost haunting her own life. Devin's childhood trophies still sat on the shelf. His old baseball glove was in the hall closet. Candace's perfume lingered on the upstairs sheets, sharp and expensive, like her personality. The first week, I waited by the phone. The second week, I made excuses. They're busy. I told myself, new life, new responsibilities. By the third week, the truth set in. I was no longer part of my son's world. Grief has stages, but betrayal skips all of them and goes straight to humiliation. The neighbors were kind, too kind. Jenkins brought casseroles like I'd lost someone to death. I had just not to the kind the church knows how to bury. One night, maybe a month later, I woke to the sound of laughter outside, not the warm kind, the cruel kind. Teenagers' spray cans hissing, voices echoing off the brick. When they ran off, I went outside barefoot and saw the words scrawled across my wall in red paint. The abandoned woman's house. It took 3 hours and 2 buckets of soapy water to scrub it clean. My arms ached, my back screamed, but I didn't stop. With each stroke, I wasn't just cleaning paint, I was washing off weakness. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table, a thought came so clear it almost frightened me. Candace had been right about one thing: the house was old. The paint was peeling, the faucet leaked, the furniture sagged under time, but that didn't mean I was old. I had just stopped living for myself. People say you can't pour from an empty cup, but they never tell you what to do when that cup cracks. I decided to remake mine. I opened my notebook and started a list: paint walls, fix bathroom faucet, clean the yard, buy new curtains. Each item wasn't just a task. It was a promise to myself. The next morning, I went to the hardware store, first time in years. A young man, Marcus, helped me pick paint colors. "For your kids?" he asked politely. "No," I said, smiling for the first time in weeks. "For me." That's when it started, the rebirth I didn't know I was capable of. The world didn't clap for me. There were no inspirational quotes in the sky, just me, An old woman with a paint roller, some aching joints, and a determination that burned quiet but bright. It's funny they say statistically, people over 60 are less likely to start major home projects. But I'd argue that statistic doesn't measure heartbreak properly, because heartbreak, when it settles in the bones, can rebuild a person just as easily as it can destroy them. I painted through the noise of my own thoughts, through memories of Devin as a child, through Candace's sneer, through the echo of Vivian's fake smile. By the time I finished the living room wall, my hand was trembling. But for the first time since they left, I felt proud. The color was soft cream, the kind that made the afternoon light glow like honey. My home didn't look rich, but it looked alive. Old age wisdom says you can't teach experience. Maybe that's true, but you can rebuild after it. I stood in the middle of that freshly painted room and whispered to myself, "You're not done, Eleanor. You're just getting started." Outside, the rain began again, not the cold kind, but the cleansing kind. The next morning, I woke up with sore shoulders and a strange lightness in my chest, the kind you feel after crying all night and realizing the world didn't end. I made myself coffee, the strong kind that could wake the dead, and sat by the window watching the neighborhood wake up. Mrs. Jenkins waved at me from her porch. She'd seen the new paint through her curtains last night. Her smile was wide and proud, like I'd just come home from war. Maybe, in a way, I had. That morning, I decided to tackle the kitchen. The walls were a dull green, faded and chipped. I'd bought a can of soft yellow, something warm, something alive. As I stirred the paint, I thought of how grief is like that old color always present, always dulling things. Sometimes you just need to cover it up with something brighter. I put on an old sweatshirt and got to work. The radio played soft Motown in the background. The smell of fresh paint filled the air, mixed with the faint scent of coffee and lemon cleaner. I got paint on my hands, in my hair, even on my cheek, but I didn't care. Halfway through, Marcus, the young man from the hardware store, stopped by. "I was delivering nearby," he said, grinning shyly. "Thought I'd check if you needed a hand." I hesitated. The old me would have said no, too proud, but the new me was learning that strength didn't mean doing everything alone. "Sure," I said, handing him a roller. "Just don't tell anyone I'm letting a teenager do my walls." He laughed. "I'm 26, ma'am." "Oh, excuse me," I teased. "A full-grown child then?" He laughed harder, and for the first time in months, I joined in. The sound startled me laughter, real laughter, echoing through a house that had forgotten the sound. By late afternoon, the kitchen was glowing. The yellow made everything feel warmer, even the old cabinets. Marcus helped me move the table back. "It looks brand new," he said. "No," I replied, stepping back to admire the room. "It looks lived in again." He gave me a thumbs up. "You're something else. Miss Eleanor." "Careful," I said. "Keep flattering me like that, and I'll have you fixing my whole roof." When he left, I made tea and sat at the table, staring at the walls until the sun dipped low. For the first time, my house didn't feel like a burden. It felt like mine again. That night, though, sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake thinking about Devin, where he was, whether he'd eaten, whether Candace had finally realized that gold-plated forks can't fill an empty soul. I hated that I still worried. Love doesn't have an off switch, no matter how badly you wish it did. Around 2, I got up and opened a box of old photos. Devin in his little league uniform, Devin at his high school graduation, Devin at his wedding, smiling nervously beside Candace, who had refused to eat the food I'd cooked with my own hands. I remember overhearing her whisper to one of her cousins, "It tastes like cheap takeout." I pretended not to hear, smiling through the sting. It's amazing how many smiles a mother can fake before her face forgets how to make a real one. The next day, I decided to visit my old workplace, the accounting office I'd retired from 2 years ago. I needed to see someone who remembered me for who I used to be. That's where I ran into Jasmine Hayes. She'd been a secretary back when I worked there, always with her nose buried in law books during lunch breaks. Now, she was sitting behind her own glass door, attorney at law. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. Eleanor Thorne. I don't believe it. I smiled. It's still just Eleanor to me, honey. She came around the desk and hugged me tight. You look different. Not worse, not better, just different. What happened? Life, I said simply. We went for coffee after work. I told her everything Devin's move, Candace's cruelty, the humiliation. I didn't cry, though. My tears had run dry. Jasmine listened with the kind of silence only good listeners have, the kind that doesn't rush you. When I finished, she put her hand on mine. You know, what they did could be considered elder abandonment. Elder abandonment, I laughed softly. That sounds like something from a crime show. She smiled but didn't joke. I'm serious. You're 64. Your son had a moral and, in some cases, legal obligation to ensure your well-being. If you ever wanted to protect yourself, you could. I'm not suing my son, I said quickly. I'm not suggesting that, she said, but document everything. Save messages. Protect your assets, especially your house. Make sure no one can manipulate you again. Her words sank deep. For years, I'd been the kind of woman who thought strength meant silence. But Jasmine's words gave me permission to see silence for what it really was: submission. I thanked her, hugged her goodbye, and went home feeling different. Not angry, not sad, just aware. That night, I wrote in my notebook again. At the top of the page, I wrote 3 words: you have rights. I slept like a stone. Over the next week, I tackled the bathroom faucet, the one that had dripped for years like a clock counting my loneliness. Marcus came by again, helped me tighten the pipes, and taught me how to replace the washer. I felt absurdly proud when water stopped dripping. He said, "You could teach a class, Miss Eleanor." I grinned. Oh, trust me, it'd be a very short class. Lesson 1, read the directions. Lesson 2, call Marcus. We laughed again, easy and real. There's an old saying that says, the soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. I used to think it was poetic nonsense, but as I stood there, covered in paint and rust stains, I realized it's true. My thoughts were changing color, just like my walls. And in that change, something beautiful was beginning. The first real test of my new strength came quietly, as most tests do. It was a Thursday afternoon, warm and windy, and I was in the garden pruning the roses I'd planted years ago when Devin was still a boy. They'd overgrown terribly, half dead and thorny, but under all that neglect, there were still tiny buds ready to bloom. Funny how nature mirrors us, isn't it? You can ignore it, mistreat it, and yet, with just a little care, it fights its way back to life. I was humming softly, poem, covered in soil, when the phone rang. The sound startled me. I hadn't heard that ringtone in months. I rushed inside, wiping my hands on my jeans. The number flashing on the screen made my breath catch. Devin! For a second, I just stared. My hands shook. He hadn't called once since that morning he left. Not one message, not one "I'm okay." My heart raced, torn between anger and hope. I pressed answer. Mom. His voice, older, heavier somehow. I gripped the phone tighter. Devin, are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine, he said. His tone clipped. Listen, Mom, I need to ask you something. I waited. Not how are you? Not I'm sorry. Just business. I need to borrow $5,000. It's urgent. The air left my lungs. 5,000. Yes, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I swear I'll pay you back in 2 months. I sat down slowly. What do you need it for? He hesitated. Expenses, just things that came up. Expenses, I repeated. Don't you live in a mansion with your millionaire mother-in-law? What kind of expenses could you possibly have? Mom, please don't start, he snapped. Are you going to help me or not? That tone, cold, impatient, hit me harder than any insult. It was the same tone his father used when he was tired, before the accident. Except his father always followed it with, I'm sorry, baby, and Devin didn't. Devin, I said slowly, steadying my breath. I haven't seen you in 3 months. You didn't call. You didn't ask if I was eating, or alive, or dead. And now the first thing you say to me is, you want money. I knew you'd turn this into drama, he muttered. You're always the victim, eh? Always the victim. Those words snapped something inside me, something that had held for far too long. For 64 years, I'd been the giver, the fixer, the woman who mended every broken thing except herself. But right then, my voice came out calm, steady, and new. No, Devin, not this time. I won't lend you a penny. The silence on the line was long and cold. Then, a faint sound Candace's voice in the background, sharp, whispering something I couldn't make out. Devin sighed heavily. Fine. I should have known I couldn't count on you. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the silent phone, the dial tone humming like a funeral bell. It's strange how rejection works both ways. I'd spent my life terrified of rejecting my son, afraid it would mean I was a bad mother. But saying no didn't destroy me. It freed me. That night, I called Jasmine. I told her about the call. She let out a low whistle. $5,000. That's not grocery money. Eleanor, something's wrong over there. Wrong. Yes, people who live rich don't borrow small. They borrow big or not at all. Either that woman, Vivian, is in deep trouble, or your son is. I didn't want to believe it, but Jasmine's instincts were sharp. Can you find out? I asked quietly. I might know someone who can, she said. Let me do a little digging. A week passed before she called again. Her tone was different, this time heavy. Eleanor, you better come to my office. When I arrived, she handed me a thin folder. Everything inside is public record, she said. But you'll want to sit down. I opened it and began to read. Vivian Sterling's so-called empire. Her import business was a house of cards. The mansion she flaunted wasn't even hers. She was renting it, behind on payments by 6 months. Every investment she bragged about was debt, loans, defaults, fake companies listed under shell names. She's broke, Jasmine said, completely. And it gets worse, she's been charging your son and daughter-in-law rent, $2,000 a month for that private wing she claimed was theirs. I looked up, stunned. Rent Devin never said anything. She convinced them it was an investment in their future, Jasmine said bitterly. She's bleeding them dry. That's why he called you. He's desperate. I sat there, unable to move. My son, my ambitious, foolish, proud son, had traded me for a life that didn't even exist. She's exploiting them, I said softly. Jasmine nodded. And you can't stop it, but you can be ready when the house of cards falls. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat by the window, watching headlights drift by, thinking about how manipulation wears 1,000 faces, some dressed in designer clothes. In the quiet, I whispered to the empty room. I raised a good boy. He just lost his way. But I also whispered something else. I'm not going to lose mine. The next morning, I baked for the first time in months cornbread and coffee cake. The smell filled the house, warm and nostalgic. Mrs. Jenkins stopped by, drawn by the scent. Well, look at you, she said with a grin. Smells like old times. I poured her coffee. Feels like new times. She laughed. Honey, I like that. You should put it on a t-shirt. We talked for hours about little things, but inside, I was building walls not out of wood and paint, but out of wisdom. You see, when life betrays you, you have two choices you can crumble, or you can study the blueprint and rebuild smarter. I was choosing the second. By the time the sun set, I had made a new list in my notebook, this one titled, What I Will Never Give Again. At the top of the list, my peace. At the bottom, money to anyone who treats me like a backup plan, FL. And right there, between those two lines, I felt something new take root. Not anger, not revenge, something quieter, stronger. Boundaries. The day after Jasmine's discovery. I woke up earlier than usual before the sun even peeked through the blinds. The house was silent, but it wasn't the heavy silence that used to weigh on me after Devin left. This silence was light, purposeful, like the pause before a new song begins. I brewed coffee, black and strong, and sat in the kitchen with my notebook. I flipped past the old pages, the repair lists, the quotes, the small triumphs, and landed on a blank sheet. At the top, I wrote next chapter. Then I underlined it twice. I'd already painted, fixed, and repaired. Now it was time to grow. My garden had been a mess since last spring, a tangle of weeds and forgotten dreams. But as I stepped outside with gloves and a trowel, the morning air smelled of earth and second chances. I started digging, pulling weeds, turning soil. For every root I yanked out, I whispered something to myself like shedding old fears one by one. You will not cry for people who walked away. You will not explain your worth to anyone. You will not apologize for surviving. Mrs. Jenkins came out in her robe, holding her mug. Eleanor, honey, it's not even 8 in the morning. Good, I called back, smiling. I want to beat the heat. She chuckled. You're beating more than that, if you ask me. We laughed. It felt good. By noon, I'd planted marigolds and begonias, flowers that promised color even when everything else faded. I didn't realize how much I'd missed getting my hands dirty. It reminded me of my husband, Thomas. He used to say, a person who plants something in the ground believes in tomorrow. He'd been gone 30 years now. I still missed him, not the way you miss what's lost, but the way you honor what made you strong. After lunch, I headed to the hardware store again. Marcus spotted me immediately, wiping his hands on his apron. Back for more paint. Not this time, I said, smiling. I need a new shovel and some fertilizer. The good kind, not the kind that makes your roses smell like swamp gas. He laughed. You're becoming our favorite customer. I winked. That's because I don't just fix houses. Marcus, I fix lives starting with mine. He chuckled and helped load everything into the cab. As I was leaving, he said, You know, Miss Eleanor, my grandma always says paint and dirt cure more heartbreak than any therapist. I grinned. Your grandma's a genius. When I got home, I put on my old gospel records, the same ones I hadn't played since Devin's wedding day. The sound crackled through the air, warm and steady. My brushstrokes in the garden matched the rhythm of the music. There's something deeply spiritual about working with your hands when your heart's been broken. It's like you tell the universe, I'm not done. Not yet. By evening, the front yard looked new, fresh soil, colorful blooms, a sense of order. Even my old fence looked proud again. But that night, as I sat in my living room sipping tea, I heard the faint sound of thunder. A storm was coming. The irony didn't escape me. I smiled faintly and said aloud, Let it rain. I'm waterproof now. The next few days passed in calm rhythm paint, plants, and peaceful silence. Until Friday evening, when I got a call from Jasmine again. I found more, she said immediately, about Vivian. My stomach tightened. What now? She's worse off than I thought. She's being sued by 2 creditors and owes back taxes. And according to one of my contacts, she's using Devin's name on a few business documents. He might not even know it. I sat back in my chair. She's using my son's name for her scams. Possibly, Jasmine replied. But don't worry. I filed an inquiry. It's unofficial, but if anything's tied to him, we'll know. The anger that rose in me wasn't the same bitter fury I'd felt when Candace insulted me. This was cold, steady anger, the kind that comes from clarity. That woman's a parasite, I whispered. She's a professional manipulator, Jasmine agreed, but her time's running out. When her debts collapse, she'll drag everyone with her. Not me, I said firmly. Not this time. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet, listening to the thunder rolling closer. I thought about Devin, how he'd been raised by a woman who taught him hard work and honesty, only to fall under the spell of one who lived off lies. It was easy to hate Candace, but Vivian, she was the architect, the spider, and my son had been her prey. Lightning flashed outside, painting the living room walls white for an instant. My reflection glowed faintly in the window, a woman with silver in her hair and fire in her eyes. I whispered, Let her fall. And may my son see what kind of queen he bowed to. That night, the storm came down hard. Rain hammered the windows, thunder roared. But I didn't feel afraid. The world outside was raging, but inside, my house, my life felt steady, strong. Old age wisdom says, when it rains, the roots drink. I finally understood what that meant. You can't grow in sunshine alone. You need storms, too. When morning came, my garden glistened like glass. The marigolds stood tall, defiant. As I poured myself coffee, the phone rang again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered, Mrs. Thorne. The voice was male, deep, formal. This is Officer Reynolds from the Detroit Financial Crimes Division. Do you have a moment to talk about your son? Yeah, that. My breath caught. What about him? Nothing serious, he said quickly. We're conducting a routine inquiry related to Ms. Vivian Sterling's business operations. Your son's name appeared on some documents. We just need confirmation he's not a business partner. I felt a wave of dizziness. Jasmine had been right. No, I said firmly. He has nothing to do with that woman's business. I can promise you that. The officer thanked me and hung up, but I couldn't shake the chill crawling up my spine. I stood by the window, staring out at my bright, perfect garden, and whispered, Devin, what have you gotten yourself into? The answer, I would soon learn, was worse than I ever imagined. But at that moment, in that fragile peace between storms, I believed something deeply, almost superstitiously, that no matter how dark it got, I would not lose myself again. Because this time, I wasn't waiting to be saved. I was already saving me. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared not anymore, but because old instincts had come back alive. You know that feeling when you sense a storm isn't done, just circling back? That's what it felt like. By sunrise, I'd already called Jasmine. She answered on the first ring, her voice rough from coffee and late-night casework. I figured you'd call, she said. The detective already reached out to me, too. He's legit. So it's real, I asked quietly. It's real, she said. Vivian's under investigation for multiple counts of fraud and falsified financial records. The problem is, she used Devin's name as an executive partner on 2 of her shell businesses. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. Does that make him responsible? Legally, maybe. But if we act fast, we can prove he didn't know. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the sunlight spilling across the kitchen counter. You think he's innocent? She hesitated. I think he's stupidly loyal. And she's the kind of woman who weaponizes loyalty. That hit me hard, because I'd been that woman once, the one who trusted too much, loved too blindly. I'll handle it, I said finally. Eleanor, I said I'll handle it. I hung up before she could argue. That afternoon, I drove to Vivian's neighborhood. It was one of those gated communities that pretended to be paradise big lawns, perfect hedges, fake smiles. The guard at the gate barely looked up from his phone when I said, "Visiting the Sterlings." He waved me through. The mansion looked as glossy as ever, white columns, black iron fence, a fountain shaped like some Greek goddess. But up close, it was different. The grass was yellowing, the paint on the shutters peeling, and the mailbox was stuffed with letters marked urgent. I parked across the street and just watched. For 20 minutes, no one came out. Then the front door opened, and Vivian appeared. She was wearing a silk robe and sunglasses. Even though the day was cloudy, her hair was perfect, but her posture wasn't. There was a slump, a weariness that expensive clothes can't hide. Behind her, I saw Devin carrying a box. He looked thinner, his shoulders curved inward, his face pale. My heart clenched. Candace appeared next, holding a smaller box, makeup cases, jewelry boxes, and what looked like her wedding album. Her expression was sharp, but her eyes darted nervously toward the street. They weren't moving, they were running. Vivian barked something I couldn't hear, pointing toward a black SUV. Devin nodded obediently, setting the box inside. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Every maternal instinct screamed to run to him, to grab him by the shoulders and shake sense into him. But I didn't move. Not yet. Let her crumble first. Let the truth expose her before I stepped in. As I watched, A man in a suit pulled up one of those no-nonsense types you just know is from the bank or the law. He approached Vivian, and though I couldn't hear, I saw her body stiffen. Her hand flew to her mouth. Devin stepped forward, confused. Candace took a step back. The man handed her a paper, then turned and walked away. Vivian stood frozen for a second, then crumpled right there on her front steps, knees to marble. I didn't need to guess what it was. Foreclosure. The mansion wasn't hers anymore. Maybe it never truly was. Devin helped her up, looking lost, scared. Candace tried to speak, but Vivian shoved her away. Furious. The argument got heated, Candace's voice rising, Vivian's gestures wild. Then, suddenly, Devin dropped the box he was holding. It hit the ground, the sound echoing across the street. I saw him say something, short and sharp, something that made Candace's face twist and Vivian's jaw clench. Then he turned, walked straight into the street, and stopped. Right in front of my car. He didn't see me at first. His eyes were somewhere else far away, like a child lost in a maze he helped build. Then he looked up and froze. Mom. I got out of the car slowly. Hello, Devin. He looked shocked. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I said calmly. Packing your sins. He flinched. It's not like that. Then what is it like? I asked softly. You move into that woman's house, let her poison you against your own blood. And now you look like a man who hasn't slept in a week. He looked away, shame flickering across his face. You don't understand. Oh, I understand plenty, I said, stepping closer. You thought money could buy peace, but you forgot when a liar feeds you luxury, you pay with your soul. Behind us, Candace shouted something about not needing this drama. Vivian snapped at her, and the two of them started arguing again. Devin's voice cracked. Mom, please, don't make this harder. I'm not making it harder, I said, voice low and steady. I'm making it real. He looked like he might cry, for the first time. I saw the boy he used to be, the one who built birdhouses in the yard, the one who kissed my hand on Mother's Day. You can come home. You know, I whispered, not to hide, to rebuild. He shook his head, tears brimming. She'll hate me if I leave. She already does, I said quietly. You're just her collateral. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, I messed up, Mom. I nodded. Yes, you did, but mistakes don't have to be permanent. Then I turned and got back in my car. He stood there, rooted to the spot as the rain began to fall. As I drove away, I didn't look back. For years, I'd been the woman left standing in the rain. This time, I was the one driving through it, not to escape, but to live. That night, Jasmine called again. You were right, she said. The house was seized this afternoon. Fraud charges are being filed against Vivian. I said nothing. Eleanor, she added softly, your son's name is clear. I closed my eyes. Relief, sadness, something in between. Good, I whispered. Now he'll finally see what real wealth looks like. What's that? She asked. Peace, I said, and it's all mine. For 3 days, I didn't hear a word from Devin. Not a call, not a text, not a knock on the door. I told myself I didn't care that I'd done my part by warning him, by giving him a way out. But that's the thing about motherhood. The heart still aches even when the head knows better. By the 4th day, the rain stopped. The air smelled fresh again, like the earth was starting over. I spent the morning cleaning, humming softly and trying to drown the quiet. Around noon, I heard a knock. It wasn't the gentle kind. It was desperate. When I opened the door, there he was, my son, standing in the same place Candace once stood, but with none of her arrogance. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his face streaked with exhaustion. Behind him, Candace stood under a dripping umbrella, mascara running down her cheeks. Mom, Devin said softly, can we come in? The rain from his coat pooled on my welcome mat. I stared at them, 2 ghosts of their own making. Candace looked at the floor, as if the gravel were more forgiving than my face. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, quietly, I stepped aside. Wipe your feet. They obeyed without question. Inside, the house felt smaller somehow, not because it was, but because shame makes everything shrink. Devin sat at the table like a man waiting for a verdict. Candace stood behind him, arms folded, but her defiance was brittle now, like a cracked vase holding on to its last shape. I poured coffee. Black, no sugar, no comfort. When I set the mugs down, neither reached for them. "So," I said, sitting across from them, "you're here." Devin swallowed. "Vivian's been arrested." "I heard," I said evenly. "She used my name on fake companies," he went on. "I didn't know. Mom, I swear I didn't." "I know," I interrupted, "because if you had, you wouldn't have been scared. You would have been arrogant." He blinked, surprised, then nodded slowly. "You're right." Candace finally spoke, her voice trembling. "We didn't know where else to go. The media's everywhere. People at my job found out." "Your job?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "I didn't know you had one." Her cheeks flushed. "Vivian said I didn't need to. She said appearances mattered more than effort." "Ah," I said softly. "And look how well that turned out." Devin flinched. "Mom, please. I know we deserve this, but I can't watch her fall apart." I turned my gaze to him. "You watched me fall apart once. Did it hurt then?" His eyes filled instantly. "It kills me every day." I took a slow breath. "Good. Because pain, when it's honest, changes people. If it's changing you, then it's finally worth something." Candace covered her face, sobbing. Devin reached for her hand. For the first time, I didn't see manipulation. I saw regret. The real kind. The kind that doesn't perform. It confesses. "Mom," Devin whispered, "I want to come home, just for a while. I'll find work. I'll pay you rent." The word stunned me. Rent. From my own son. But this time, I saw it not as an insult, but as humility, the kind that rebuilds. I didn't answer right away. I looked around my kitchen, the freshly painted walls, the golden light, the peace I'd fought tooth and nail to build. And I realized something letting him back in wasn't weakness anymore. It was control. I wasn't the same woman who'd been humiliated on her own porch. I held the keys now. "You can stay," I said finally. "But there are rules." Candace looked up, startled. Devin nodded immediately. "Anything. You both work," I said firmly. "You both pay rent. And you both treat this home like it's sacred. Because for me, it is." "Yes, ma'am," Devin said softly. "And," I added, looking straight at Candace, "if you ever raise your voice at me again, I'll hand you your luggage before the echo fades." She nodded quickly, tears still streaking her face. "Yes, ma'am, I understand." For the next hour, we sat in silence, the kind that heals instead of wounds. Devin ate 2 biscuits and 3 apologies. Candace sipped her coffee with trembling hands, whispering thank yous under her breath like prayers. When they left to fetch their things, I stood by the window watching the rain start again, but it wasn't storming anymore, just a soft drizzle, washing the dust off the world. That evening, as they returned with boxes and duffel bags, I helped them unload. Not because I had to, because I chose to. Devin carried the last box in and set it down. "Mom," he said quietly, "I don't deserve this." "No," I said, "you don't. But forgiveness isn't something you deserve. It's something you earn." He nodded, eyes wet, and whispered, "Then I'll earn it." Candace, standing behind him, met my gaze for the first time. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was cruel to you. I was jealous." "You had what I never did, someone who loved you no matter what. I didn't know how to handle that." It took me a long time to answer. "You broke something precious," I said. "But the funny thing about mothers is we keep spare pieces of love, just in case." Her tears spilled freely now. "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "Good, now make it mean something." That night, I lay in bed, listening to the faint hum of their voices down the hall. It wasn't the joyful noise of family yet, not even close, but it wasn't silence anymore. It was something in between, something beginning again. As I drifted off, I whispered to the dark, "You did it, Eleanor. You didn't just survive. You taught them how to start over." And for the first time since the day they left, I slept without a single tear. The next morning, the house felt alive again. Not in the way it used to, when noise filled every corner and I ran myself ragged, trying to keep everyone fed and happy. No, this was quieter, warmer, the kind of alive that hums like a steady heartbeat. I woke up early, the way I always did, and brewed a pot of coffee. When I turned around, Devin was already in the kitchen. He was wearing one of Thomas's old t-shirts, the faded gray one with the Detroit Tigers logo. He looked so much like his father in that moment that my chest ached. "Morning," I said softly. He nodded. "Morning, Mom." He hesitated, then reached for 2 mugs. "You still take it black, right?" That simple question nearly broke me. For months, we hadn't shared a word that wasn't barbed or bitter. Now here he was, remembering something small, something ordinary, but it felt like peace. "Yes," I said. "Black's fine." He poured, then sat across from me. We didn't speak for a while. We just sat there, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but full of everything unsaid. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Candace has a job interview today." "Oh, at the community center. They need an events assistant." I raised an eyebrow. "Events? She can handle that. She's good with people when she's not pretending to be someone she's not," he said with a faint smile. I chuckled softly. "That's new honesty from both of you." He looked down. "I think that's what we were missing. Mom, honesty. We kept trying to play rich, pretend happy, pretend strong. And now," he looked up. "Now I just want to be good." Something in me softened then. That's a start. We were quiet again. The sound of rain outside had been replaced by the chirp of robins, the soft rhythm of a neighborhood waking up. When Candace appeared in the doorway, I almost didn't recognize her. No fancy hair, no silk dress, just a plain blouse, jeans, and nerves. She looked young human, even. "Good morning," she said cautiously. "Morning," I replied, handing her the last biscuit from the tin. "You eat before you interview. Hungry people can't impress anyone." She blinked, then smiled weakly. "Thank you." Devin grinned. "See, told you she'd feed you." I smirked. It's muscle memory. They laughed the first genuine laugh I'd heard from them in months. Later that day, I went into town to meet Jasmine for lunch. She was already there, sitting at the cafe window with a stack of papers beside her, and that knowing smirk she always had when she was about to drop news. "Don't give me that look," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Oh, I'm giving it," she said. "You deserve an update." I stirred my tea. "About Vivian." She nodded. "She's officially charged with 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of forgery. She's out on bail, but she's done. Her accounts are frozen." "Good," I said, though my tone was cool. "Maybe she'll learn humility the way I did by losing everything." Jasmine tilted her head. "You really have changed." I smiled faintly. "Pain is a ruthless teacher." She chuckled. "And yet you graduated with honors." I laughed a soft, real laugh that felt strange on my tongue. "Don't flatter me yet. I still have 2 grown children in my guest room." Her expression softened. "He came back." "Huh. Yeah, and her too." She raised an eyebrow. "That must have been interesting. Like hosting 2 ghosts," I said dryly. "But at least they say thank you now." "Small miracles," she said, sipping her coffee. Then she leaned closer. "You know, Eleanor, you could press charges. Against Franklin, against her. You have proof. Vivian used Devin's name without consent. You could make her pay." I shook my head slowly. "No, I don't need to punish her. Life's already done that. Besides," I smiled faintly, "the best revenge is living well." Jasmine chuckled. "That's some Auntie May wisdom right there." I raised my glass. "I'll drink to that." When I got home, the sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. Candace was standing at the counter, stirring something on the stove. Devin was teasing her about burning the food. I said low heat, he said. "I am on low heat," she argued, waving the spatula. "You're just impatient." The smell hit me garlic, butter, something warm and homey. Candace turned when she saw me. "Oh, Mrs. Thorne, I hope you don't mind. I thought I'd cook dinner, just spaghetti, nothing fancy. I smiled softly. If you can cook without setting off the fire alarm, you're already doing better than Devin. Hey, he protested. Sit down, son. You know it's true. He grinned, shaking his head. As we ate, something strange happened. Conversation flowed, easy, kind. Candace told stories about her childhood, the good ones, the ones that didn't sound rehearsed. Devin talked about applying for construction work, and I listened. For the first time, it didn't feel like I was listening to strangers. It felt like family again, maybe not the one I'd planned for, but the one I had left. After dinner, Candace quietly started washing the dishes. I tried to stop her. You're the guest. She shook her head. Not anymore. Not if I can help it. That night, as I turned off the lights, I glanced down the hall. Devin's door was cracked open. I could hear faint laughter, his and Candace's. Not cruel laughter, not mocking, just human. And I thought to myself, maybe grace doesn't mean forgiving once. Maybe it means forgiving over and over, until the memory of the pain no longer has power to it. Before bed, I stepped outside to check my garden. The marigolds were blooming in the moonlight. I whispered, "You did it, girl. You planted forgiveness, and it actually grew." Then I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't fade, the quiet, satisfied kind that comes when you've made peace with your story. Little did I know, peace wasn't done testing me yet, because sometimes the universe makes sure you truly mean it. It was around 2 weeks later when peace decided to test me again. The kind of test that sneaks in through the back door when you finally think the storm's over. It was a bright Tuesday morning. The house smelled like coffee and detergent. I was folding laundry on the couch when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Devin's truck was already gone. He'd left early for a construction site interview, so I assumed it was Candace coming home from work. But when I peeked through the curtains, my heart skipped. It wasn't Candace, it was her, Vivian Sterling. The woman who once looked at me like I was an inconvenience to her perfect world now stood on my porch in a wrinkled suit, sunglasses hiding what I guessed were sleepless eyes. Her hair, once sculpted like armor, hung limp around her face. I didn't move, didn't breathe. She knocked twice. Then, "Quieter, Eleanor, please." Something inside me twisted. The old me before the paint, before the storms would have opened that door out of politeness. The new me just stood there. When she knocked again, I finally walked over and cracked the door an inch. "What do you want?" Her voice trembled. "I need to speak with Devin." "He's not here," I said. "And even if he were, I'd tell you to leave." She sighed, pulling off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, swollen. "Eleanor, I know you hate me. You have every right to. But please, please tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I didn't mean for this to happen." I opened the door another inch. Didn't mean for what to happen. Vivian the fraud, the lies, the way you humiliated me in my own neighborhood when you turned my son against me. Her lips quivered. I was trying to protect my family. I thought I was saving us. By stealing from people, I asked, my voice cold. By building a palace on borrowed money. She swallowed hard. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I said, "You loved control more than truth. You mistook fear for loyalty. And now you've lost both." She took a shaky breath. "They froze my accounts. I have nothing, Eleanor. Nothing but guilt." For a moment, something flickered in me, pity. Maybe. But pity is a dangerous drug. It's the same one that made me stay silent all those years when Franklin lied to my face. So I exhaled slowly and said, "That's what starting over feels like. Welcome to it." She stared at me, stunned. Then her voice cracked. "Please, just tell him I'm sick. They found something. I don't have long." That made me pause. "What are you saying?" "Cancer," she whispered. "Stage 4. The doctors say maybe a few months." I blinked, the words hanging in the air between us like fog. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she continued, tears streaking down her cheeks. "I just want to tell Devin myself before it's too late." The silence stretched long enough to feel heavy. Finally, I nodded once. I'll tell him." Her face softened with relief. "Thank you." Then, before she turned to go, she looked at me, really looked. "You're stronger than I ever was," she said quietly, "and I think that's why he came back." I said nothing as she walked down the path and climbed into her car. The engine coughed once, then roared to life, and she drove away. For several minutes, I stood there, staring at the empty street, stronger than she ever was. That's not something you hear from your tormentor. It felt like both a confession and a curse. That evening, when Devin came home, I told him. He went quiet, very quiet. "Is she really dying?" he asked finally. "I don't know." I said honestly, "But if she's telling the truth, you'll regret not saying goodbye." He sat there for a long time, head in his hands. "I can't forgive her, Mom. I can't." "You don't have to," I said gently. "But closure isn't forgiveness. It's peace." He looked up. His eyes were full of confusion and sorrow. "Would you go?" I thought about it. About all the years I'd spent wishing for an apology that never came. About how pain loses its power when you decide it's not your story anymore. "Yes," I said finally. "I would go. Not for her. For me." He nodded slowly, gripping my hand. "Then I'll go tomorrow." The next day, I drove him there. Vivian's mansion, what was left of it, had been emptied by auctioneers. The drapes were gone, the furniture stripped, the garden brown. But the woman herself was sitting outside, bundled in a coat, waiting. When she saw Devin step out of the car, her face broke into something between joy and grief. She whispered his name. I stayed by the car as they spoke, far enough not to intrude, but close enough to protect him if she tried to twist things again. But she didn't. She just wept. He sat beside her, shoulders trembling, and after a while, he cried too. The scene was quiet, raw, and unbearably human. After half an hour, Devin stood up. He kissed her forehead, then walked back to me. His face was wet, but his eyes looked clear. "Ready?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, it's done." As we drove away, he turned to the window, watching the house disappear behind us. "I don't hate her anymore," he said softly. I smiled faintly. "Good. Hate's just grief that forgot where to go." He glanced at me. "You really forgive everyone, don't you?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "I just refuse to let them rent space in my peace." He laughed quietly, about the first real laugh of the day, and "You sound like Aunt Jasmine." "Don't insult me," I teased. She'd charge me by the hour for that wisdom. We both laughed, and as the city skyline faded behind us, I realized something profound. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back into your life. It means locking the door gently, not slamming it. You move forward not because they deserve it, but because you do. When peace finally finds you, it never announces itself with fanfare. It slips in quietly, like a guest who takes off their shoes and whispers, "I'll stay a while." That's what life felt like in the months after Vivian's visit. Quiet, grounded, almost ordinary again. Candace's job at the community center became steady. She came home smelling of paper and coffee, sometimes with paint smudges from helping kids with craft projects. Her laughter no longer sounded sharp or rehearsed. It was softer now, like she was learning what joy actually sounded like. Devin found work at a local contracting firm. The first paycheck he brought home, he handed to me with trembling hands. "Rent," he said simply. I smiled. "Keep half. Buy yourself something that doesn't come with guilt." He laughed a real one this time and hugged me. I hadn't felt my son's embrace in years, and this one wasn't out of obligation. It was apology and promise, and something close to peace. Every Friday, I'd cook something special. Not fancy, just real food. Fried catfish, collard greens, cornbread. Candace would set the table, Devin would open the sweet tea, and for 2 hours, we'd talk like people who'd seen the worst and decided to choose the better. One night, I said something without meaning to. "You know," I murmured, watching the candlelight flicker on their faces. "You two might not have saved the marriage you built on pride, but you're saving the family you almost lost." Candace looked down at her plate. Devin reached over and took her hand. They didn't say anything, but their silence said enough. A few weeks later, Jasmine dropped by. She never announced herself, she just appeared with her loud knock and louder laugh. "I come bearing gossip and groceries," she declared, holding up a paper bag. "Lord, you sound like a church lady and a news anchor all at once," I teased. "Please," she said, swatting my arm, "if I ever end up like Sister Mildred, just bury me under your hydrangeas." We laughed so hard, we nearly dropped the groceries. Once the laughter settled, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, her tone shifting. "You'll want to hear this one," she said, lowering her voice. "What now?" "Vivian passed away last night." The words hit me like the echo of a thunderclap, not loud, but deep. How I asked. Her illness took her fast. Liver cancer. No pain meds could keep up at the end. I nodded slowly. "Did Devin know?" "He does now. She left him something." That surprised me. What could she possibly have left? "A letter," Jasmine said. "She wrote it before she died. Had her lawyer deliver it this morning." I stared at the table, tracing invisible circles on the wood, and Jasmine reached into her bag and pulled out a folded envelope. "She sent it to my office first, said she trusted me to give it to you, said you'd know what to do with it." I hesitated before taking it. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper, but the handwriting was shaky, fragile. "For Devin Thorne and Eleanor. She included you," Jasmine said quietly. I nodded, my throat tightening. "Thank you, Jazz." When she left, I sat alone at the table, staring at the letter like it was something radioactive. Part of me didn't want to open it, but the older you get, the more you understand that closure doesn't come from silence, it comes from facing the thing you tried to bury. I broke the seal. Vivian's handwriting wobbled across the page. "Eleanor, I was wrong about you. I used to think strength came from control. You showed me it comes from surrender. When my world fell apart, I saw how you held yours together quietly, gracefully, fiercely. I envied that. Devin is a good man. I twisted that goodness into obedience, the same way the world once did to me. I wanted him to love me because no one ever did, but I realize now I stole his loyalty from the one person who truly earned it, you. If there's any mercy left for me, I hope it's that he finds his way back to you and to the woman he married. And if you can, tell him I loved him the only way I knew how. I've left behind what little I could. My house is gone, my fortune dust, but I asked my lawyer to sell what remains and donate it to the Detroit Women's Shelter. In your name, because you were the woman I should have learned from. Vivian Sterling. When I finished reading, I didn't cry. I just sat there in silence. It wasn't forgiveness that filled me, it was finality. She was gone. The story that had shadowed my peace for years was finally over. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a small box where I kept my husband's watch, old family photos, and my mother's ring. Then I called Devin into the kitchen. He came in, hands still dirty from fixing a fence. "What's up?" "She left you this," I said, handing him the letter. He read it slowly, his lips trembling as his eyes moved across the page. When he finished, he pressed it to his chest. She did love me," he whispered. "Yes," I said gently. "She just loved wrong." He nodded, tears brimming. "I don't know what to feel." "Feel everything," I said softly. "That's how you heal." That night, as I stood on the porch watching the stars blink over the city, I felt Thomas's presence beside me, that calm, steady spirit that used to keep me from unraveling. "I think we did it, old man," I whispered. "We raised him right. Eventually." The wind rustled through the trees, soft as an answer. Inside, Devin and Candace were laughing again, teasing each other over some TV show. I let their laughter wash over me like music. Grief had turned to growth, betrayal to wisdom. And what was left this quiet, humble peace felt like grace. Old age wisdom says, you don't have to win to be victorious. I didn't win against Vivian. I didn't conquer her lies. But I outlived them, and sometimes that's enough. Spring came early that year, the kind of soft, forgiving spring that makes everything bloom twice as bright, as if the earth itself is making up for all the pain it once held. The air smelled like rain and lilac, and every morning sunlight slipped through my curtains like an old friend who knew where the coffee was kept. Devin was the one who planted the lilacs. I hadn't asked him to. One Saturday, he showed up with a shovel and 3 small pots of them. For the fence line, he said, bashful. You used to talk about wanting them. I had 10 years ago. He'd remembered him. Candace brought lemonade and stood beside him, laughing as he struggled with the soil. They looked peaceful, not perfect, but honest, like people who had finally made peace with imperfection itself. I joined them, squatting by the roots, pressing my hands into the cool earth. Don't plant them too close, I warned, or they'll choke each other. Devin smiled faintly. Sounds like us. We all laughed quiet, knowing laughter. That afternoon, while Devin worked in the yard, Candace helped me reorganize the kitchen. It was her idea. You shouldn't have to reach for heavy things anymore, she said, pulling down the old cast iron skillet and setting it in a lower cabinet. You make it sound like I'm 100, I teased. She giggled. You just move like one when you're tired. Careful, I warned, pretending to swat her. The truth was, I enjoyed her company now. The walls between us had softened. We'd built something new, fragile, cautious, but real. She had learned to listen, and I had learned to stop lecturing. Do you ever think about her? Candace asked suddenly. Who? Vivian? I dried a plate slowly. Every now and then. I don't hate her anymore. I think she was just broken, and broken people break others when they don't heal. Candace nodded, eyes misty. That's what I was too. Broken. But you didn't break me back. You could have, but you didn't. I smiled softly. That's not who I am, sweetheart. Life's already mean enough. I don't need to add to it. She blinked fast, then said, Thank you for letting me back in, for not giving up on us. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You earned your place here, Candace, and you'll keep earning it by staying kind. She nodded, smiling through tears. I will. Later that week, I got a visit from an unexpected guest, Pastor Michael. He still moved slow, cane in hand, his silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. Eleanor, he said, standing at my gate. I drove by and couldn't resist. Your garden's putting mine to shame. I chuckled. It's the rain, not me. The heavens finally decided to water the righteous. He laughed so hard he had to hold the fence for balance. Now that's a sermon title. We sat outside, sipping tea. He looked around, nodding with approval. This place feels healed. It is, I said. Or maybe it's me who's healed, and the house is just catching up. He smiled knowingly. You know, forgiveness doesn't always come as a revelation. Sometimes it just sneaks in when you're busy planting flowers. Old age wisdom agrees with that, I replied. Forgiveness grows better in clean soil. He chuckled. Preach it, Sister Eleanor. Then his tone softened. And how's your son? He's good, working hard, quiet, thoughtful, not the man he used to be. And Candace, she's learning, I said. She's gentle now. I didn't think I'd ever use that word about her. The pastor smiled. Redemption comes slow, but it comes. He patted my hand before leaving. You're proof that storms don't just destroy, they prune. The following Sunday, Ruth and I went to the farmer's market. The place smelled like strawberries and old wooden crates, alive with chatter. She bought too many peaches. I bought too many stories from strangers. On the drive home, she said, you look lighter, Eleanor, like someone finally took the bricks off your shoulders. I did, I said, laughing softly. Turns out, I was the one carrying them the whole time. She smiled. That's the trick of life, isn't it? Realizing no one's coming to fix you, you fix yourself. Exactly, I said. And you start by forgiving yourself for waiting so long. We passed by the community center, and through the window, I spotted Candace helping a group of kids paint a mural. She had paint on her face, laughter on her lips. It hit me then, the same woman who once mocked my old walls was now helping others paint theirs bright again. Life is strange like that. It has a sense of humor. That evening, as the sun melted into gold across the horizon, Devin called me outside. "Come here, Mom. I've got something to show you." He led me to the garden. The lilacs had been planted in a perfect line, each one standing tall and sure, but in the middle, he'd added a small wooden sign. I leaned closer. For Mom, who taught us how to bloom again. My breath caught. "Devin." He shrugged. Shy. "It's true." I didn't speak. I just hugged him, tight. That kind of hug that speaks a whole language of forgiveness and loss and second chances. Candace stood nearby, smiling softly, her hands muddy from helping. "You too?" I whispered, wiping tears. "You two finally learned to get your hands dirty." Devin grinned. "You taught us that, too." As the first fireflies blinked in the dusk, I realized something simple but profound. The house that had once been my prison was now my sanctuary. Not because it was perfect, but because I was no longer afraid to live in it. For the first time in years, I went to bed with no regrets, just gratitude. And as Luna curled up at my feet, I whispered, "We made it, little one. We made it all the way through." Summer crept in like a slow sigh, warm, golden, and forgiving. The air hung heavy with the scent of lilacs and fresh-cut grass, and the evening stretched longer, softer. The house, once a silent witness to so much pain, now hummed with quiet life. Devin's laughter drifted through the open windows. Candace hummed as she cooked, and I'd learned to rest without guilt. Rest. That was new for me. One Saturday afternoon, I sat on the porch with Luna asleep on my lap, the rocking chair creaking softly beneath me. I was watching the neighborhood children chase bubbles across the street when a car I didn't recognize pulled up. A man stepped out tall, neatly dressed, carrying a briefcase. For a moment, my heart tensed. Lawyers only come knocking for two reasons: bad news or business. "Mrs. Thorne," he asked politely. "Yes?" He handed me an envelope from the estate of Ms. Vivian Sterling. I blinked. "She's gone." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. But she left one last matter unresolved. She requested you be informed personally." I signed the receipt and took the letter. After he left, I just stared at it. I'd thought Vivian's story had ended months ago when she passed, but she'd left a final whisper in paper form. Devin came out a moment later, wiping his hands on a towel. "Who was that?" "A lawyer." I said, "Vivian's?" He frowned, walking closer. "What's in it?" I unfolded the letter slowly. It was short, just a few lines written in her old, elegant script. "Eleanor, this property, the small lake cottage in Brighton, was never meant to be mine. I held it for someone who reminded me what real strength looked like. It's in your name now. Use it for peace. Or for beginnings. A cottage. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or curse the woman for her theatrical timing. Devin's eyes widened. "She left you a house." Apparently, Candace appeared in the doorway, her hands covered in flour. "Wait, your mother-in-law left you something, not us." "Looks like it," I said, folding the letter. "A lake cottage." Devin whistled softly. She must have known. Known what I asked. He hesitated. "That you'd be the only one who'd take care of it. Not for money, for peace." I chuckled dryly. Peace is a full-time job, son. A week later, we drove out to see it. The lake cottage sat on a quiet stretch of road near Brighton, surrounded by tall pines that swayed like old guardians. It wasn't large one-story, white siding, a little dock that reached into still water that shimmered silver in the sun. When I stepped out of the car, the air smelled of cedar and rain-soaked earth. Birds chattered lazily overhead. Candace clasped her hands. "It's beautiful." "It's simple," I said softly. "And simple's what I need." Inside, dust floated in the sunlight like gold specks. The place had been untouched for years. One bedroom, one kitchen, and a small fireplace framed by faded stone. There was something humble about it, honest. Devin ran a hand over the mantel. "Mom, this could be your escape, your quiet place." I smiled faintly. Maybe. Or maybe it's where we all come to breathe. Candace looked around. We could fix it up, paint the walls, patch the dock. I shook my head gently. No, let's not erase its age. Some places deserve to show their years, like people. Devin smiled. That sounds like something Pastor Michael would say. It's something your mother says, I teased, nudging him. We spent the afternoon sweeping, airing out the rooms, and letting the windows breathe again. There was laughter, dust, and sunlight. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel haunted by my past. I felt rooted in my present. Back in Detroit, life continued its gentle rhythm. Ruth and I still met for coffee twice a week. Jasmine called to share legal gossip and complain about her clients. And Ken's sweet. Patient Ken had started showing up more often with groceries he pretended were extras. "Ken," I said one evening as he handed me another bag of fruit, "you buy like a man feeding 10 children." He smiled sheepishly. "I like excuses to see you." I laughed, shaking my head. "You could just say that instead of hiding behind oranges." He grinned. "Then you might not let me in." "I'd probably let you in anyway," I admitted. He blinked, surprised. "You would?" I sipped my tea, meeting his gaze. "Don't push your luck." He chuckled. "Yes, ma'am." Weeks passed, and one Sunday afternoon, Devin and Candace joined me for dinner at the cottage. The table was simple fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and lemonade. We ate on the porch, watching the sun drift lower over the lake. "Do you ever think about starting over?" Mom Devin asked. I smiled. "Every day. But the thing about starting over is, you realize you already did. You just didn't notice when it happened." Candace nodded quietly. "That's how I feel lately. Like I'm still me, but not the same me." "That's growth," I said. "Pain's just the tuition we pay for wisdom." Devin leaned back in his chair. "You always have these sayings. Where do you get them from?" I grinned. Mostly from life, and sometimes from reruns of The Golden Girls. They laughed until tears rolled down their cheeks. As twilight deepened, fireflies danced across the yard. Evan and Candace sat on the dock, their feet dangling in the water, whispering softly. I stayed on the porch, watching them. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I could hear enough the way they spoke to each other gently now, the way they listened instead of fought. They'd changed. We all had. And I realized something I hadn't dared to before. Forgiveness isn't a door you walk through once. It's a house you keep rebuilding, room by room. That night, before bed, I wrote in my journal. I thought I lost everything when they left. Turns out, I was just clearing space for the life I was meant to live. Luna purred softly beside me as I closed the book. And as I drifted to sleep, I thought of Thomas again, the way he used to hum off-key when fixing the porch light, the way his hand always found mine in the dark. I whispered into the quiet, "We did it. Love, I'm finally at peace." Hey, everyone. Tonight we're back at that little lake cottage, the one Vivian left behind, like a strange apology wrapped in silence. The sun is falling low over the water, turning everything gold. And there's that smell again, rain mixed with pine, the scent of endings that feel a little like beginnings. You might not survive this one, because tonight isn't about revenge or pain anymore. It's about what comes after. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe let a fan run for some gentle white noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. I woke up early that morning to birdsong echoing through the open window. Devin had built a small deck on the back of the cottage, and Luna was curled up there in the sun, blinking lazily like she owned the place. The air was so still that even the lake looked half asleep. Candace came out of the guest room wearing an oversized flannel shirt and holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You're up early again," she said, sitting beside me. "Old habits," I smiled. "The body remembers what the mind forgets." She nodded quietly. "I used to hate mornings. Now I love them. They make me feel like I have another chance. That's because you do, I said. Every morning you wake up, you get to choose who you're going to be. She looked at me for a long moment. You really believe that? I do, because I've done it myself. We sat there in silence for a while, sipping coffee and listening to the wind stir the trees. Later that afternoon, Devin arrived with Ken. Yes, that Ken. Apparently, Devin had invited him without telling me. "Mom," Devin said, stepping onto the porch with a grin, "look who I ran into at the market." Ken held up a bag of groceries like it was a peace offering. He promised there'd be fried chicken. I laughed, shaking my head. "You two conspired against me." "Guilty," Devin said. Candace winked. "You're outnumbered now." And somehow, I didn't mind. We spent that afternoon cooking, talking, and laughing like people who had finally stopped pretending life had to be perfect to be beautiful. Ken told stories about his accounting clients, the kind of tales that make you laugh so hard your ribs ache. Candace told Devin to stop sneaking bites from the pot. I teased Ken for measuring the cornbread batter like it was a tax return. It was ordinary, and that was its magic. When dinner was ready, we ate outside by the lake. The sun sank lower, the water turned to glass, and the first fireflies blinked like tiny lanterns. Devin raised his glass to starting over. Candace added, to forgiving what we can and learning from what we can't. Ken lifted his, too, and to women who survive everything. They all looked at me. I laughed softly, shaking my head. "I'll drink to that." We clinked glasses and fell into a comfortable silence. After dinner, Devin and Candace went down to the dock to sit by the water. Ken stayed with me on the porch. "You built something beautiful here," he said, watching them. "I built it out of ashes," I replied. "But I suppose that's what gardens are, life that grows from what's been burned." He turned to me. "You ever think about what comes next?" I looked out over the lake, where the reflection of the moon rippled like silver silk. For the first time in my life, I don't have to plan the next battle. I just get to be. Ken smiled softly. "That's rare." "It's peace," I said, "and peace is rarer than gold." A few weeks later, life settled into an easy rhythm again. Devin got promoted at work. Candace started an after-school art class at the community center. Ken and I went to the farmer's market every Sunday, and yes, he still bought too many oranges. Sometimes, I'd sit on the porch alone at night, writing letters I never planned to send. One was to my husband, Thomas, telling him that the boy we raised had finally found his way home. Another was to Vivian, thanking her for the cottage that had somehow become the vessel of my peace. And sometimes, I'd write to my younger self, the Eleanor who cried on her front porch while her neighbors watched. I'd tell her, "You will survive this. You will paint your walls and your heart the same color, new, strong, bright. You will live again." Because I did. Old age wisdom says people don't change, but I think that's a lie we tell ourselves when we've given up hope. I saw it with my own eyes, a proud son learning humility, a cold daughter-in-law learning tenderness, and a broken woman learning to love herself again. We didn't just survive, we bloomed. That's the strange grace of life. It doesn't always give you what you ask for, but it often gives you what you need to become who you were meant to be. As the final light disappeared behind the trees, I looked out across the water and whispered, "Thank you for everything that hurt and everything that healed." Luna meowed softly, as if to agree. And with that, I closed my journal, leaned back in my chair, and let the night hold me content, whole, and quietly victorious. Because this time, the story didn't end with loss. It ended with peace. Eleanor Thorne's story began with betrayal, a son, Devin, and his ambitious wife, Candace, who abandoned her for a life of wealth under the manipulative control of Vivian Sterling. Candace's mother, humiliated and left alone, Eleanor found herself mocked by neighbors and haunted by silence. But rather than crumble, she rebuilt herself from the ground up, repainting her home, reclaiming her dignity, and rediscovering her worth. Through months of quiet perseverance, she learned that pain can be a teacher. She refused to fund her son's entitlement or his mother-in-law's schemes. When they returned, broken and penniless, Eleanor made the hardest choice. She turned them away. That act of self-respect became her turning point. As time passed, life humbled Devon and Candace, teaching them empathy through struggle. Slowly, genuine remorse replaced arrogance, and they began rebuilding trust. Vivian's downfall, her exposure and illness, and eventual death closed the last chapter of deceit, leaving behind one final gift, a small lake cottage in Eleanor's name, a place of peace rather than penance. There, surrounded by forgiveness and laughter, Eleanor discovered love again, not romantic love alone, but the love of self, of healing, and of family reborn. Her son grew into a better man, her daughter-in-law became kind, and Eleanor herself found something far greater than revenge serenity. In the end, her story wasn't about loss at all. It was about the slow, courageous art of becoming whole. Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this journey? Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from, and if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and stay for the next life I'll tell. Good night, my dear listener. Until the next story, sleep well, and never forget, peace is the sweetest victory of all.